What does the NBR pundit has to say? It doesn't mean much because it's a very small single quarter decline. There is no formal evidence of a recession. There is no cyclical decline yet. Oh, we are all feeling it, that the economy is much weaker and slower than a year ago, right? But by the GDP metric, it's not a recession so far. But you look at the industrial production, some false signals in there. If you look at real personal income, it's flat. Real sales came down, came up a little bit. Unemployment insurance claims peak, really going up, but that's also because they increased the benefits thing, the time limit. So these traditional indicators of the economy, monthly ones, are all mixed. And that's usually a sign of a weak economy. You don't want to call it recession technically? Don't, but it's a recession. So by the time they declare it, usually I say by the time the NBER declares a recession, a typical recession lasts about 9 months, the last few months. By the time they declare it, it's over. That's a good clue. But you know, they probably will not be declaring this one for a while. So don't wait upon that, you know, momentum cue that if they declare it, it's the last innings. From now onwards is up. So job growth bifurcated as usual, education and health positive, government positive, rest of it negative. And as the tax revenues suffer, this will also go negative. Education will then suffer a little bit because of that. And the healthcare, well, it just keeps on growing. Which is the one component that's keeping the GDP numbers positive? Duncan talked a lot about our exports and external sector, and that's that sector. What's been happening? We've increased our exports because the dollar has become weaker. That's okay, I can understand that. But what have we also done? Well, we're not growing very well. We're not doing much investment. So our imports have actually been, you know, declining. So when imports are declining and it's a negative entry into GDP, the contribution becomes positive. So in the end, we got a bang per buck. We increased our exports. We really drastically reduced our imports, and our GDP, contribution to the GDP, on a GDP that grew about 1.9 last quarter, look at the contribution from the net exports, 2.5%. Will this last for long? The answer is no. Yes, cheaper prices, cheaper dollar makes you sell a lot more stuff abroad. But at the same time, you know, they need to have the demand. And here's the big thing. The fastest growing economy in European Union, it was and still is Spain. Spain is going through its own housing deflation. So Spanish growth rate is 4% a year ago. It's now down to less than 2. UK, Germany, they now have had a negative second quarter. Their growth rates have also really fallen. And if you look at China, as I've been saying to you before, I don't put up the growth numbers. So far, they were always 10% plus minus 0.2. Now, they're not going to be 10%. Olympics are over. They've smiled, the world has seen, the cameras have gone, back to normal business. And where is that symbol coming out? If you look at the exports and the industrial production of Taiwan, Singapore, Japan, all have declined very quickly in June and July. Because they are the suppliers, input suppliers to China to make products to sell to the West. So their suppliers are now beginning to show that there's no demand from their buyer. So it's slowing. So the Asia is going to be slowing from that effect. So you put it all together, the export growth will not be as good as it was in the last 2 years. Which means the trade deficit, hey, a lot of people don't like a high trade deficit. I don't blame them. It's going to get halved from what it was a few years ago, very quickly. Why? Your exports are not growing, Rajiv. Why is it getting halved? Well, the imports are not going to be growing anymore. There's no investment much going on. Why isn't that? Company revenues. Look at the Dow 30 company revenues. And the last one. Here is the, as I would use John's thing. Use your eye, don't have to run a regression. So look at one thing. When the company revenue growth, not profits, revenue. When the company revenue growth is down, so is the investment. IT investment is the best predictor of the growth in future. That is, where is it right now? Almost 0%. But the company revenues, which is a little bit positive, that was because ExxonMobil had a great quarter. You take that one out, it's negative. So what's the trend? Will they be investing going forward? What's their confidence level? Duncan can probably elaborate more on that. You know, he deals directly with the CEOs. Not good. So investment growth won't be good, which means the job growth won't be good. And this way you can understand why I cannot give you a positive job growth, decent one, even when the GDP comes up to around 2% level. Because the businesses are not hiring and doing much expansion. So Maria Bartiromo had an interview with Bill Ford. She says, if oil goes down, could we see a shift back to the SUVs? When the oil comes down to that $80, $85, will this car sales pick up? And he had an answer that was like, I don't think so. This is a permanent shift. People got scared by seeing that $4 gallon of gas. Even though it's come down, you cannot assure yourself that it won't go back up again. And you've seen the difference, and you say, I want to buy insurance. I want to get like a small car or something different or drive less. You know, my commute has now been reduced by almost 40%. I moved closer to work. But my commute was never bigger before. But people are beginning to do that. So will the car sales bounce back up to 14, 15, or 16, the normal? The answer is no.